Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Monday, September 30th. I'm on the Asian account, so the timer has run over already for the month. So we got up to rank 18, we ended on 18, we got a chest for rank 17. I did surprisingly well this month on the Asian account. Not that that really matters much. We're back to, I guess, my old scheduled time of around 2 or 3 in the evening instead of noon. I really need to try and wake up and stream the solo expansion tomorrow at noon, but who knows if that happens. Get double there for no reason. So the only reason we're here to start off with is to see if we've done the Tavern Brawl, and we've done it 3 times, which tells me we had to do it 3 times for a daily quest, which means I really don't have a reason to be playing on the Asian account to start with, but it would be a waste of time to switch around. So Paladin, Hunter, destroy minions. We need 2 out of 3 of these done. That's not going to be particularly a problem. Let's jump into the solo adventure here and just see if we could unlock week 4. I think the answer is probably no.
A plague of murlocs. Everyone who ventures across
halls of origination. Then I know that place.
So this halls of origination will unlock tomorrow around exactly at noon, it seems, and on my main account I have 1, 2, and 3 already done, so if the stream goes well, we'll do 4 and it will unlock the 5th one, which I think would be available immediately. I don't see a real reason why it would make you wait. So that just puts us into doing standard Hunter and Paladin games and working our way up the ranked ladder, which is perfectly fine, because that means we can work our way back up the ladder. Even though we got to rank 17, that only puts us back down to rank 21. And I know they've changed the rank system, so there's a lot lower ranks for new players, but that really doesn't solve the issue that happens with old players like me that aren't paying to win. Like, there's definitely some problems with the way this game is balanced, and you'd think 5 years in I would be able to make it at least to rank 10 and comfortably stay at rank 10.
Greetings, traveler.
This is kind of an example of
Well met.
of how you just are never going to get ahead in a free-to-play game, most free-to-play games. Although, you know, if you don't mind lewd adult anime girls, or slightly lewd anime girls, if you don't apply the uncensored patch, Destiny Child, as a extremely greedy free-to-play game that is a gacha game, I'm doing pretty great on it. And I've never put a dime in it, so that seems like that's something that to consider, is that there are free-to-play games out there that are more acceptable as far as what they offer you, and there's a small collection I think out there of free-to-play games that are actually rather good and rather generous. Just realized I did stop some videos playing on my YouTube thing, so let's go over here and pause that and pause that. Now give me a little bit more bandwidth.
To my side.
So otherwise, I guess we'll go through the news. I've been mostly doing Lego City Undercover. It's so grindy. Really can't like really complain about the quality of the stuttering. It is still stuttering. It is something I guess I should complain about, but it's not happening with any level of frequency is what it seems like, and I'm half questioning whether I just was getting more and more frustrated as I was playing more and more Lego games back to back, that once I took a break and just said let's forget about some of this that's going on with the
converting stored energy.
Let's hit that. There you go. Yeah, once I took a break and kind of forgave and forgot, or just forgot, more accurately, coming back to it doesn't seem as bad. That being said, it's still a major problem.
Ooh,
and there's other major problems of just, unlike any of the other Lego games, Lego City Undercover is this experience that has you, in particular, playing some story mode stuff that wasn't very satisfactory, and then it has you play this open world stuff that's not very satisfactory. So it feels like you really are just grinding for kind of no reason at the end now, because that's all I can do is just do the story mode stuff. Well, I've done the story mode stuff, so all I can do is the open world stuff. So I'm just running around a disappointing open world, doing disappointing repetitive actions, just so I can get 100% completion on a game that wasn't very attractive at all. That's been the exact opposite experience with all the other Lego games, because the other Lego games in particular were like Lego Star Wars was amazingly fun. It was entertaining and enjoyable to go through the story missions twice. That is not true with Lego City Undercover. Let's see. And that's been true for all the other Lego games. So Lego City Undercover, not made by TT Games, doesn't feel kid appropriate. Let me just mention that again. It's just the one to skip. There's a couple of them that probably are skippable. I think you could probably skip the Lego Hobbit game, particularly on PC, since it doesn't have the final part of the DLC, and probably the Lego Lord of the Rings game. But at least if you were going to play those games and you had a passion for the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, it would still be way more enjoyable than Lego City Undercover. Lego City Undercover is total terrible. We have a person on the chat saying hi and good work. Thanks, I suppose, is the right response there. And a little early in the gameplay to be getting congratulations, but I'll take it anyway. Doesn't have anything to do with video games, but I just learned that there's a lawsuit apparently forthcoming from the FTC against Match.com and 45 other companies that Match.com also owns, or the owner of Match.com also owns, because, you know, almost all the dating sites were the same. They were intentionally sending out advertisements from fraudulent accounts. So the account had been, as I understand it, already flagged as potentially being fraudulent. They didn't care. They would send out people who weren't paying a notification saying you've got someone interested in you, and then they were convincing people to sign up for 6 months, and then they were making it incredibly difficult to not sign up, to sign up for a 6-month fee. So online dating now seems like it was a total scam, and
Dead or alive.
I think it probably has been that way for at least 10 years. It kind of makes sense that Facebook wants to kind of make a separate dating site, but then you're talking Facebook, and like, why in the world would you want to trust more information to Facebook?
Reporting for duty. Job's done.
Apparently today is International Podcast Day. YouTube creators is asking what are 3 pieces of advice you'd give to someone looking to start their own podcast. The number one thing to avoid when starting a podcast is pod fading. The idea that you start and you quit making consistent recordings very quickly or after a couple of years. So my advice, if you want to make a podcast, you've got to have the gift of gab. Your friends have to have the gift of gab. They've got to potentially already have proven that you and your friends that want to start this podcast, of which there will always be one person that's most enthusiastic about it. You got to prove that you guys already get together and already talk for potentially 3 hours a week, minimum, like in long spurts about one topic. If that is the case, and you all have actually interesting opinions and actually interesting vocal delivery, because you really are selling a product there that is built around your voice, then maybe at that point you start thinking about making a podcast. I think a lot of people try to make podcasts, and it's like one person's super enthusiastic about it, that one person can talk nonstop, but the friendship was never as solid as it should have been to start with between the other people, and then most of the other people don't even say too much. I would say even the Giant Bombcast now has gotten to a very different style than what it was in the past. Now it very much is they go down a scripted just kind of plan of sorts, where they go around the table asking each person what game they're playing. A lot of them don't have any games they're playing, so they don't ask them whether they don't say anything. When somebody is talking about the game they're playing, there's barely any interaction at all. It's just really a case of the person announcing what they're doing, and then everybody else on the team at the table pretty much just listening and agreeing with them. There's really no discourse or questions being asked. Another thing you can do is mention what we're talking about. Like particularly in video game podcasts, they'll be talking about a game and they'll mention the name at the beginning, and people will miss that. You kind of have to repeat yourself 3 or 4 times just to make sure people know what you're discussing. Okay. We can put that in there.
Stored energy.
We can put that in there. And we can attack that. So yeah, just referencing what you're talking about, having a way to have proper Discord and not just have people take turns ranting and talking straight. Like what I do on my videos probably wouldn't be a great podcast unless I could find two other strong personalities that would balance out what me talking, because I talk like nonstop, and that works as a YouTube journalist slash like audio journal, which is kind of what I'm doing, but it really wouldn't work as an interactive thing. Personally, I think if you're going to make a podcast, you should probably go comedic with it. I don't think that there's not a lot of podcasts I listen to that don't have some air of brevity and comedy on it. I don't want some dry announcement. And frankly, if I had more improv skills and more comedy in my blood, I'd probably do that for like these streams. That being said, that gets in the way if you're just always thinking about what's the next thing I can say to make a joke. That gets in the way very quickly with your actual goal of being a critic. And I would say that the Giant Beast cast shows a great example in that, in which they hired Abby Hepburn, a improv comic, for the lack of a better descriptor, instead of being a person who actually knows and plays games.
Reporting for duty.
But yeah, I don't know what International Podcast Day really means, though, in the sense that I think yesterday was International Coffee Day. It seems to me like there's an International Something Day every day of the week.
Let's go.
And go ahead and play this.
The battle.
Go ahead and play that. So there's really no reason, but considering, I guess, that I'm gonna stream today, then have to stream tomorrow, and then have to stream Wednesday again, with today and Wednesday being the video game news in Hearthstone, and then tomorrow being the solo expansion of Hearthstone. There's no reason to really try and stretch out this stream. This could be a shorter stream, certainly. Yep. So, knowing that, I imagine we should just move forward.
Access denied. The victory is yours.
There we go. Yep. So I just need to pull up need to speed up and just start covering the games. Not a lot came out this weekend, and only one bit of news happened this weekend that we'll talk about, and usually there's no bits of news.
Uther versus Medivh.
I will say, I really would like to get the full bundle that you can get in Japan only of the Sega Master System Mini. Like, what they're selling in the rest of the world doesn't include like a collection of the 28 games in, like, there's plastic game cartridges to represent each of the game that is built into the system. And then there is a Sega CD edition that you can hook to the bottom of the Sega Master System Mini that's to scale, and then there's a 32X that you plug into the top of it. And these don't plug in to do anything, but they look cool. And then there's a Sonic and Knuckles modifier that you plug into the Sega 32X top, and then you can plug in Sonic on top of that. And I don't know if the Knuckles modifier, which I don't think that really changed any other games, which it would have been cool if that somehow did something different for any of the other games, but it, I doubt did. It's really just a large collection of plastic, but if you're going to have something that looks cool on your shelf, that you might as well go full out of it. It would be the equivalent if the NES Mini had come with a Zapper Mini and a Rob Mini and a NES Power Pad Mini and the U-Force. I think Nintendo actually made, whereas some of the other accessories for the NES might not be something that they would immediately want to have in there because it isn't actually officially
for justice
made by Nintendo. But there was certainly a ton of things that and accessories that you could have gotten with the NES to go with that, and the Super NES would have the Super NES Mini if it had a Super Scope Mini that plugged into it, and a mouse pad Mini that plugged into it. That would be interesting too, even if they don't really do anything.
follow the rules.
So yeah, it would have been nice if more of those things happened. I also had the thought that as much as the Virtual Boy was a failure, a Virtual Boy Mini, if you came out with that and you got the license to all the games that were on the Virtual Boy, and you released, like, I think there was only about 36 games for the Virtual Boy that were ever made. So if you got all of those licensed and put on a Virtual Boy Mini, and then you had somebody that made like an Oculus Rift VR headset, so it actually worked, that it sat on the stand and looked like a Virtual Boy that had to sit on the stand and had to be plugged into a controller, and then you could unplug all of that and then strap it to your head and actually get full color, full colorized versions of those games, which I don't know how you do full colorized version of those games, but what you could also do is offer other VR games. If you somehow went so bold as to say, hey, we're actually going to celebrate the Virtual Boy because we know it wasn't a big success, but we're going to not just pretend like it didn't exist.
For justice.
I'm going to play a little protection here. I think that would be a bold move without actually being even that dangerous. And then it would be an interesting way to test the markets, because right now the only virtual reality thing that Nintendo is doing is the Labo VR, the Nintendo Labo VR cardboard thing from about a year ago. So if they could get something that was actually a VR platform that was actually in color, and particularly if it was using the laser DLP technology instead of whatever modern technology is being used, that would be interesting, although perhaps not worth it. It's probably not worth investing into that technology, or investigating, or designing that technology. But if they backdoored a VR headset and said, "Oh yeah, the Switch and the Switch Lite are portable consoles, but we're just gonna have a second portable console that is VR," that makes a little bit more sense than trying to make a underpowered device like the Switch your VR platform, because there clearly was no design there for that to actually work. Anyways, let's start covering games. We have a game on here called Cardaria, which any card game I want to see success, but you can see some of these animations look extremely copy and paste from Hearthstone. I'm gonna at some point find some time and try and change the WebPeak interface, so I'm gonna try to make it look a little bit nicer, and I'm thinking maybe getting rid of the chat in totality in the WebPeak, or just in general. Like, my channel in the chat has somehow gotten worse, not better, as far as people commenting and the frequency of this. This is an English and Russian card game, 200 unique cards.
Let me think.
I normally would give them a chance, but honestly, this so much looks like a Russian low effort theft of just concepts and art. Like, everything here looks so similar to Hearthstone. Why would I want to play something that looks so much like Hearthstone? I guess we'll put it on the fall list. That'll give me an excuse to talk about it at a different time. Yeah, it's crazy. It really is crazy that it's just, for a brief time there was a lot of activity. There was a handful, 3-4 people that were showing up at every stream, and I don't know how much of this has to do with notifications or how much this has to do with I just got lucky and had some viewers that really wanted to chat, and then either they still are watching and they just don't want to chat anymore, or they have stopped watching. I think a lot of it has to do with YouTube just not emphasizing live streams, and like notifications are a big issue too. If I'm gonna try to pull everybody to a live stream, I think I'd have to not put out notifications for any of the other videos, and then the other videos, the pre-recorded footage, would get no advertisement whatsoever. Nobody would know about them, but that's pretty much what the case is right now anyway, so I don't know how different that would really be. Let's bombs, and then magnetic,
Stored energy.
and then magnetic with a shield, and then magnetic with taunt.
Denied. Job done.
Then in return. So yeah, there's just
You require my assistance?
some weirdness with the whole system, and evaluating the chat where it is. Having it on the screen is a nice feature that I can save for later, but basically it's serving no purpose and it's taking up screen space, which would probably be better suited if it wasn't there. Perhaps my rules are a little too egregious, but I haven't even had like trolls complaining about the rules or breaking the rules on the chat. So if anything, they may be a little aggressive, but they actually do their job. Which that's pretty much the way every posted rule works, is that you post something that's slightly aggressive and you make it known that you don't want this certain activity. Alright.
Follow the rules.
Okay, we need this gone. And then this gone. And I can do 13 damage right now, or I can kill that. And then
Reporting for duty.
we can kill that. Job done. Then we can end the turn. So yeah, I don't really have any better idea as far as what to have on the screen. Like we have the Hearthstone deck tracker over here. I could bring up the other player's deck, but I find that confusing to say the least. There's really no way to adjust this in any other way. This kind of is a 4:3 ratio board, so it is just going to have this empty space. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking we'll go, and we'll just change things for change's sake, if nothing else. Moving on, we have a game on here called 3D Visual Novel Maker, which this clearly is a low effort asset. Well, I don't even know if you really call this an asset flip game as much as just a low effort troll of a game. Early access, $4.24. It's trying to sell on lewdness and sex, but it's not tagged with actually having any nudity or anything in it. This is clearly not something you would want to make or buy, and clearly not something that should be on Steam storefront. Like, Steam's claim that they're going to not allow games that are straight up trolling has proven to be a complete BS response, because they have never once actually gotten together and defined a single game, as far as I can tell, as straight up trolling, when I think any kind of reasonable, objective group would say that there are straight up trolling. So here's a suggestion. Since Valve and Steam doesn't know and doesn't want to curate its own games, why don't they just make a community panel? Like, honestly, why don't they just make a community panel? We're going to allow allow 1,000 people, maybe even 10,000 people, maybe even 100,000 people to join this community panel, and you set up some rules. You have to have an active Steam account. You have to own over 500 games. You have to have looked through at a certain number of Steam pages, if they keep that metric at all. And let's just say this panel is going to be given some early access look at games, and all they have is kind of, is this a straight up trolling game, or is this not? Is this a garbage game or not? Just a community guidelines panel, for lack of a better term. Let's play Hunter now. I don't really need to get everything done, so having 2 paladin cards that need to be played would be fine. Yeah, It would be better if there was an internal group of people that set some internal standards, but if the standard really was just we're going to have a kind of local governance of the Steam storefront and say we don't want these games on the storefront because they're asset flip games, because they're achievement games, because they're garbage games, that's fine. That would work pretty well, and then that isn't really embracing libertarianism, because inherently, like, the libertarian idea is not a system of governance by your peers or an elected group of your peers. It's basically anarchy light with very little interference of any kind of governance or government, and just allowing rampant capitalism to somehow decide and make sure everything works. And the story we'll talk about later, and I'm not intentionally teasing this as much, it's just kind of complicated and I don't want to talk about it without the page open in front of me. It does in part show that Valve's embracing of rampant capitalism has now landed them in some hot water.
I hope you like my invention.
But before we get to that story, we have a Gametsu story. For the PC, PS4, and Switch, You Know a Girl Who Chants Love at the Bound of This World has a Western launch trailer. I believe this is a remake of a classic sci-fi visual novel, a real visual novel. Interesting, from Spike Chunsoft. I guess I can watch the trailer, but I can't show it because it's rated E to M, and then the very first image it shows me is a fully naked anime girl. Good thing I didn't show that. That might get me in hot water with YouTube, even if it was covering up all the naughty bits. Hey. This is the remake here, I guess, fixes the animation to a more modern animation style, I guess, because I would be really surprised if this was a classic visual novel from 10 or 20 years ago that it would look like this. It doesn't look like modern animation, but it also doesn't look like something from the 80s or 90s. It may be the early 2000s. And the visual novel has lip flaps when they're talking, so maybe there's some voice acting in it too. This. And then this. Then it jumped into a cutscene. Then there's another picture of a fully naked girl. So they bookended the beginning and the end of the trailer with a fully naked girl, and that is early 90s anime too. Just they don't even
Come dance to my song.
They don't even go that route anymore. Either it's a full-on sex scene in an anime nowadays, or it's a lot of like implied bouncing boobs through a loose t-shirt type animation. But the middle ground of nudity but no actual sexual activity was really 90s.
Let's go.
Let's see. Job's done. It, you know, is coming to Steam, so I doubt Steam would have a problem with it either, though, because the main characters don't look like the Moe art style, where the characters look shorter and younger. Komatsu has another article here for the PS4. Demo Reborn DLC Egoist Special Selection Trailer. Demo, I believe, is a successful music game. Yeah, rhythm game that I think is coming to the West, or has come to the West. It'll be hard.
Always little time.
It would be impossible to show a game off like this because of all the copyright claims on YouTube, and I have no rhythm talent, so that would be a problem too. If I play this, it would probably change to a 3. I wanted to mention TechRaptor's new website is out. This is what it looks like in general. Let's see. Here is an article that I don't think will actually open because I already have this article open. You can see that there's a large thing. Now, in all fairness, this is zoomed in a lot. So if I switch it down to 100% zoom, this is what the website is more realistically going to look like for people. It didn't seem like they've really changed their name. I was, with this roadmap in particular, a white theme background I thought was where they would go with this. It seems like this is barely just some CSS changes, which of course a new website would be, the majority of it would be changing the style sheets, but the little Android dinosaur, I think, is going to be de-emphasized, and it's going to go for more of a cleaner logo. Not a major change though, by my perspective. And then this. I had hoped for a more white background. I had hoped for a major change. They're doing a giveaway of some game to celebrate their new website, but
Engaging
interesting.
TC-130 mental dislocator.
I just zoomed it up to 150 and it did not change the zoom at all. That seems weird, that a website would not be able to be zoomed in. There goes. It's already an example of being worse for accessibility. People with bad eyesight. There was a tweet out that went out. Minecraft is getting a board game. So, yeah, here's a picture of it. A board game around Minecraft. It's probably a little too late. This is from comicbook.com, which is not a website I visit. I've never been to it before in my life. Interesting. It really is too little too late, frankly. Like, Minecraft failed to sell at its highest popularity, and so now it's kind of like I feel like there's very few kids that are still going to be playing Minecraft to the level of enthusiasm that they would want to play a board game instead. It really feels like this would be more of an example of this really might be just more of an example of what was I trying to say? Darn it, lost my chain of thought. There will be kids that still play Minecraft, certainly, but I don't think will be any kids that want to expand from Minecraft to that. Fortnite, in a fair example, probably is also failing to get the toys out fast enough. And this has been a consistent thing about toy manufacturers in general, is that you have to know what the kids would be interested in 6 months from now. So as soon as Fortnite blew up and started to have success, Epic Games would have had to get some licensing deals with like Hasbro and other toy companies, and really worked to make sure those products were on the shelves as soon as possible. Yeah, we also see that with the Overwatch and Lego deal. Like Lego got their Lego toys out somewhat in time, but it was still kind of late. And Overwatch is now doing a Lego crossover skin that is like way too late now, because it wasn't in line with the release of with the Lego toys.
What this does.
Yeah, there was about 6 months, I would say, between the actual physical Lego toys that were Overwatch themes coming out and the digital Overwatch Lego skins coming out for Overwatch. I don't know if this is almost certainly not like valid video game news, but I think it is probably worth mentioning that with TechRaptor's new site, they've already run into problems. A 520 website is returning an unknown error from Cloudflare, so their website is already done. This is a different service than before in some way. This looks definitely different from the other kinds of errors that I was rather frequently getting from TechRaptor's website. Their website often was extremely slow, but also often turned up errors, which either TechRaptor is just doing it terribly, or they're not paying for enough bandwidth because they can't afford it, or they're not paying for enough bandwidth because they don't care. It does perhaps give some insight that if you were to try to start your own website these days, if it gets even a small amount of success, you start paying through the nose for bandwidth. That is the beauty of having a YouTube channel and having YouTube pay for all the storage and bandwidth. I absolutely could not do what I'm doing now in the format that I'm doing it now if it weren't for a service like YouTube. I could post written reviews that would be pretty bad and inconsistent in links on like Facebook or WordPress or Twitter for free, but I much prefer to get a full, more accurate recording of my voice and my thoughts in the moment, even if my thoughts often are lost thoughts and muddled thoughts. I hope that there's enough that comes out that makes sense. and particularly when I'm doing these Hearthstone streams, I'm not as awake as I'd like to be. That's why I like the pre-recorded footage, is that very rarely do I start recording a pre-recorded footage series and then go, oh, actually I'm half asleep and this is not gonna work. Here is that article, by the way, for the page that wasn't loading. Gloomhaven gets a tutorial and Asmodee Digital has a publisher sale. Okay. This doesn't have an article around it, but apparently Darkest Dungeon, being a game that could be modded, has a somewhat thriving community of modders that have made lewd, naked cartoon girls. I wouldn't even call them anime girls in that case. Adding to Darkest Dungeon. Now, what is probably the most important to take from that is Darkest Dungeon is a game that takes forever. A run could be like several hours. I'll just generalize and say several hours, and then you might have one character that dies in that run, and that might ruin your run. So much like Hearthstone, which is a game that people have been playing for 5 years on the daily, it kind of has some added value if you just want to go that route and look at some naked girls, and but then again, you also run into the danger of, are you overexposing yourself to nudity on a daily basis? Darkest Dungeon is a PC only game, so if you're spending that time on your personal computer and nobody's looking over your shoulder anyways, it doesn't matter. But yeah, it makes sense. And that's why there is also a nudity mod for Hearthstone. I think there's really only one, but if that's what you want to look at, if that's what's going to keep your attention while you're doing kind of a dull and monotonous game, which I would agree that both Darkest Dungeon and Hearthstone gets that way eventually, there's some logic there. And I have to applaud Darkest Dungeon more than Hearthstone, because Hearthstone at no point has asked anybody to make any kind of mods for it. They have not released, as far as I know, any kind of API or any kind of assistance that you could make a mod. People just had to kind of reverse engineer the software to get it to work. Whereas Darkest Dungeon, I think, was very open and embracing of mods, and I think there is a much larger general mod community for Darkest Dungeon because of that. Of course, you don't want to go too far in that direction where you're basically a Bethesda game and you're making Skyrim, and then people are making mods to fix the fact that Skyrim was broken from day one and never got really fixed. Even the special edition, from what I hear, was missing like hundreds, if not thousands, of bug patches that had been already modded into the original game. So had they even spent more effort, even a little bit of effort on it, they would have been able to integrate bug patches that had already been done into the special edition. Checker has an article here. Mario Kart Tour speeds out 20 million downloads for a record launch. But Mario Kart Tour also is a free-to-play piece of garbage game. If anything, I feel like the text is smaller now on Techcrafter, and this looks like terrible because it shows you a picture, and this picture is not a good picture. Then it says hey, why don't you go look at all these other articles, because we really don't want you to read any of the articles we write, we just want you to click on the pages. Then it gives you the article, and then it gives you related content. Then it talks about the author, which this picture is way too big. They did not adjust this at all. And then you have another advertisement. Then you have a community policy. Then you have comments, because they really don't want comments. And then they have another reference here to more articles. So there's at least 3 points on this page where you're getting funneled to another page. And then more featured reviews. And then at the bottom you get the standard bottom bar of here's where you go if you need to DMCA us and similar legalese, or contact us. So yeah, TechRaptor's new website is way worse. Way worse.
I did this. Oh, and that.
I'm looking at, like, Olivia Munn, if you don't know who she was a slightly interesting actress from Attack of the Show. I really wouldn't give her, I wouldn't say that she actually was a hardcore gamer or anything like that, but she was an actress willing to do anything and everything, and that was a breath of fresh air, certainly when you have a lot of actors and actresses that weren't willing to do anything and everything. Maybe, in a lot of ways, she never had nor gained any kind of credibility. I wouldn't go to her for an actual opinion on the game, but I remember from a Attack of the Show, and I saw her recommended on Twitter, and so she had 2 things she said she was working on. One was apparently a podcast called Bizarre States, which, as of May 10th, a pinned post, the podcast is tied up in legal, which let's see, as of September 23rd. But yeah, she was doing some kind of podcast with some other guy named Bowser, as best as I can tell. I never even heard of this podcast, and it does go to show that, and this is something that was impressed upon me recently, is that a significant amount of the YouTubers and content creators, not on YouTube or just anywhere, were getting funded by production companies, and once that production company ran out, all of them just quit. Like, or maybe it was because YouTube just got less profitable, but people quit. And I guess that's reasonable. It makes sense, but there was clearly no love for the art. Geek and Sundry is a great example of that, where, like, I went through all my old subscriptions on YouTube, and I'm looking at, like, Geek and Sundry vlog channel I'd subscribed to that hadn't put out anything in a year, and I'm like, yeah, all of these properties have either drastically changed or completely stopped. It's shocking how many people were trying to make these kind of content channels or podcasts and trying to make money off of them, when that was absolutely the wrong reason to get into making something like this. If I had gotten into making my YouTube channel and said, I'll give it a year, and if it's not making money by then, I'll quit, I would have just quit. absolutely. There needed to be a love of the art, and that love of the art does not seem to exist for a lot of content creators that they're quite falsely portrayed themselves as being actual fans. When it was probably a little naive to believe somebody like Felicia Day really was that big into the Geek and Sundry stuff when her involvement was always slightly minimal.
Your soul shall be mine.
I believe Felicia Day probably is into some of that stuff, but I believe she also is mostly into promoting herself as an actress, and that's what Olivia Munn also was, is she was promoting herself as a actress. The other thing that she has is a thing called Vogue Leader, Jessica Chobot. Oh wait, I'm not talking about Olivia Munn at all. I'm talking about Jessica Chobot. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I think Olivia Munn was the one I liked better. I think Jessica Chobot replaced her for the last year or so. So yeah, she has this fashion blog that seems like it is legitimately still going on. Of course, it's completely ridiculous to look up old actors and actresses from a failed TV channel of G4 and see what they're doing. Meanwhile, most of the tech TV crew is split between a few different factions, if they're still doing tech podcasts and such, in which they're kind of rolling their own podcasts, and most of which is This Week in Tech, and the spin-offs of them, but they can be quite boring and ridiculous. And then there's some people that kind of spun off of that spin-off. And made their own things. Daily Tech News Show,
I wonder.
I guess. At this point, listening to tech podcasts is kind of pointless to me. Like, it's kind of just all the same. Same thing. Things don't change that often in tech. Or the changes that happen don't matter that much. And I'd say tech changes quite frequently, but not on a daily, weekly basis. Let's move on though, because I'm really talking about nothing. So next game we have on Steam is a game called Icar, which is clearly just a physics experiment program. It visually would be incredibly difficult to figure out what character you're controlling and where you are. It's just doing physics of like a fluid flow in the background. $3.99 English only. This is not a game that needs to be purchased. Is there anything we can do to stop this from doing?
Ooh, I wonder what this does.
I comply.
We can do that much, I guess. There we go. Gamatsu has an article for PS4, Project Sakura Wars Hatsuho Shinonomi has a character song music video, so if you want to seek that out and watch that, I guess you can. I imagine it is just this character dancing around and singing a music video. I don't have the audio on. It's part in-game footage and part animated footage. Apparently this character is one of the tough fighting character archetypes. There we go. Gamatsu has an article here for the PS4. The new Guilty Gear adds Axel Lowe and a Mei trailer. So, this character Mei. Again, I don't want to show these trailers, so you can seek them out yourself. I'll skip through them and see if there's anything actually worth mentioning. Not really. Guilty Gear still looks really, really nicely animated with really nice cutscenes for a fighting game. It probably should be in the top 3 fighting games that I should consider playing. We're kind of quickly making progress back up to ranked, but we're not playing a lot of hunter cards. Might be more efficient to play a different hunter deck, but I guess while we're winning we should just stick with it. Next there's a game on Steam here called Sun Mei Ki. This is not English. It's tagged as an RPG action game. I would suspect that this is maybe an adventure game, better described here. Here you can see a straight up like stolen artwork of a Dragon Ball. You know that wasn't licensed, and no, you can't just put a Dragon Ball poster in your game if you want to. As for what it actually is, who knows? It's 69 cents, English not supported, it's Chinese only. I imagine it's a garbage game. The fact that it's calling itself an RPG game is perhaps the most infuriating part of this, is because there's no way this is actually an RPG game. This is an adventure game at best, and very possibly a horror game. But yeah, of course it's not going to make it to the fall list because it's not in English. Looks like another... I'd still put that at the low effort level, frankly. It still looks like it's a low effort game. Just because you can asset flip something and make it look 3D and somewhat attractive does not, in my mind, make it something that is above a low effort game. Moving on, Gamatsu for the PS4 and Switch experienced the crowdfund third entry in Spirit Hunter series. Let's see, new title is set in the world of Deathmark. I don't know what Spirit Hunter is, but it seems like it's probably a visual novel series of some sort, although HP and SB makes that seem less likely. Then success percentages seems unlikely. Maybe this is really more of a... They're saying it's more going to have RPG-like elements. We'll see how that actually plays out. Honestly, I cannot imagine right now how you would make a visual novel that has RPG elements. That some dating sims and I guess Princess Maker kind of do that, where you make a decision and then it raises your stats. but I think if you don't have a core gameplay mechanic, if there's not some way that you're fighting and then fighting, grinding, getting experience to raise up a level, if it is just one simplistic decision that increases your stats, if your health goes from 9 to 10 because you choose to spend the next hour exercising, that is RPG, but it's so light role-playing that it doesn't really fall in what I would expect. Let's go ahead and just play this and do this. We'll take out these guys. Next we have a game on Steam called Cardinal Conclave. This graphics don't look quite good enough. It's a side-scrolling shooter that seems like it's trying to look a little bit like Cuphead, or maybe this is just an artist actually trying to draw, but they clearly have scale way off. Like, what is going on with this person? You have tiny fingers, tiny neck, tiny chest, tiny waist, and then you have this extremely oddly angled perspective of a skirt that is supposedly going above her knees, and then nearly knee-high boots that are just super thick and super wide. Like, this is a completely incorrect anatomical depiction. And meanwhile you have over here a just covered in clothing, but still same problems. The shoulder, chest, waist way smaller, and then giant hips. So they clearly don't know how to draw. They don't know the basics of how to draw. This is early access for $9.99. It's English and French. I cannot chalk this up to an art style. Like, there's a way that could have been an art style, yes, but it really isn't that right now. It's lacking polish and skill to make it to that kind of determination. Speaking of lacking polish and skill, we have Filthy Frank Cart, Filthy Frank being like one of the original YouTubers that was doing shocking videos, and I don't think he's doing anything on YouTube anymore. I bet he in no way is related to this, and this is just a low-effort Mario Kart clone. It looks like garbage. It's early access at $6.99. I never watched Filthy Frank's YouTube channel, so I've seen maybe a couple of his videos, and I think they're probably fine, but that's about all I would say about him, because I don't have any other real knowledge about it. It probably doesn't stand up or have much relevance these days, because a lot of it was, I imagine, comedy skits and bits that don't really make that much sense. It would probably be close to trying to go back and watch old Jackass episodes. I don't know if I have an article about it, but they did decide that they were going to redo the Nether and for Minecraft as their next biome to fix, which that makes sense. Yeah, the Nether is quite a bit of a mess. I think I said that before. There are things in the Nether, and there's definitely some other biomes that have a lot less unique to them, but what are the things that are in the Nether aren't enough or interesting enough, considering how still a large percentage of people use the Nether to fast travel. So unless they were going to introduce a new fast travel system that completely got rid of the use of the portals, which would be a mistake because then nobody would ever go to the Nether for anything. Yeah, there really wasn't, I guess, any other choices.
I wonder what this does.
Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Kinshi developers ask fans about next priority. I don't know what Kinshi is, but apparently it's a game from a RPG game for PC from lo-fi developers. This game info actually is way useful. It has a one-time purchase monetization. Yeah, this is nice if this was only smaller. But yeah, getting that extra information about the game before you even start. Let's see. Lo-fi Games has switched to the Unreal Engine, which means one of two things: they focus on building Kinshi 2 within it, or they delay that for the sake of putting Kinshi into it. I have no idea what Kinshi is. The quick take is I enjoy the productive interaction between the developer and their fan base. It really is probably an advertisement, though, for this game that I bet nobody's ever heard about. It does ask, I suppose, a slightly relevant question, which is, if you've got a game that was a success and then you want to potentially port to a newer, more modern engine, should you focus on making a sequel in that new engine or porting the old game? And I would guess that the answer, it's kind of a tough one, actually. I can't just off the top of my head. It would certainly depend on a lot of factors, funding being a number one issue. If you have enough funding where you can work for 4 to 8 years making the sequel in the new engine, then you would just do that without announcing that you had even moved to the new a new engine. If you want more funding, then you would probably I guess from a programmer's perspective, what you would want to do is program the sequel. Yeah, I think that's what you would do first. Put all your focus on programming the sequel, and then, well, almost all your focus, I would say. What you would do is you would say, you would have like a version 1 of your engine and a version 2, and as you're programming version 2, you'd say, well, here's a feature that's not available in the first version of the game, and it would either cause problems if this was enabled completely. So let's flag this as, or comment this as something that has to be disabled for any kind of for the port of the original game that we know we'll eventually make. That way you could work on getting code that is more optimized and more modern, doing more modern features and having more abilities than what the original game had, and then you could just strip out all the new stuff if you've done proper commenting, and then the port should be pretty easy at that point. Whereas if you narrowly locked your mind into just making sure that the old game runs on the new engine, you would not be doing any creative work at all. You'd just be saying, make this work on the new engine, let's get this game out as quickly as possible. Don't try to learn anything, don't try to get familiar with the with the Unreal Engine, which is I think what they're using now. Yeah, so there's no mental growth. That's not going to be fun for a programmer. It's not going to engage the programmer, and it's really going to just double the amount of work, I think, in the long run. And in a weird way, the fact that they're asking the fan base to make that decision for them is a huge red flag, because it says that the management in charge, the people in charge that are supposed to be making the decision, the people that are supposed to have a vision and know what they're doing as far as the company is being run, they don't have that ability. So that's a problem. That's a major problem. So I would not trust lo-fi games, because any kind of rule by consensus is going to be a rudderless ship. The thing that is perhaps the only good thing that is good about managers is that they are taking control and making decisions, even if the decisions they're making aren't good. At least it's somebody in charge making decisions. If you can't even do that, you can't be a manager. I've watched enough Bar Rescue, certainly, for that to be the case. Like this week's Bar Rescue in particular, the guy has no idea how anything works, wants to be in charge but doesn't want to make any decisions. One of the bartenders walks out in the middle of training with a terrible attitude, and assumedly, from the best I can tell, didn't ever get fired. So she was just allowed to not be involved with the show and the training, and kept her job and went back to work. And as far as the Bar Rescue Updates website says, there's still some negative reviews of, I assume, that exact bartender being rude to people. And then the main manager guy, who did not know how to do anything and wasn't really taking charge, said he was going to let his daughters take over the business, and that they were going to work out a way that they buy it from her. And then he completely renounced on that, and as soon as he got the free makeover. And in all honesty, I think John Taffer probably sensed that coming, because he did not really put one of his better ideas on that specific bar. He built a trolley car that, to me, looks pretty atrocious in the middle of the room. So, yeah. And what was crazy about that bar in particular is it was the only bar in the entire county that had a liquor license. So it literally had no competition at all. Like, zero competition. It was in Utah, though, deep in the Mormon state, so I don't know how many people actually were ordering alcohol, since Mormons don't drink alcohol. I don't even believe they drink sodas. So that probably would have been a factor too. So, anyways, getting back to video game news instead of talking about Bar Rescue, which is still my obsession. Like, eventually, I'm gonna see all the episodes. Like, I'm still occasionally seeing a few that I hadn't seen before, but I can't be too far away from having seen everything.
I wonder what this does. I wonder what this does.
Alright, so this was the big news that broke out this weekend. A Tech Raptor has it, I'm sure some other people have it. Duke Nukem lawsuit has been brought against Gearbox and Valve by the original composer. As I understand it, the music that was created for the original Duke Nukem 3D, I believe is the game, was licensed to the original creators of Duke Nukem 3D, which was Apogee Games, for $1 per unit sold, which is a pretty good deal. I think Duke Nukem 3D had it sold for like $20 because that would have been a floppy disk being sold. It may have been shareware, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was a large number of people that did not actually buy it, and piracy certainly was rampant back when you could just copy that floppy. So $1 per unit sold may have not really gotten the composer a lot, but $1 on like $20, $1.20 the entire sales is pretty good. That being said, when Gearbox Publishing got the rights to Duke Nukem 3D and made the remake Duke Nukem World Tour, they did not pay anything that they, I assume, are trying to make the tired old claim that I don't think will stand up if the composer's claims are true at all. The usual title claim and the usual way this is done is the composer would be a contract employee, who was hired to make this work, therefore the rights belonged to Apogee. It doesn't seem like that's the case because this composer has contracts. He showed them to Randy Pitchford. Randy Pitchford said he was going to take care of them, and they never did take care of them. They just dragged their heels and never paid them. This falls so in line with every other allegation made against Randy Pitchford and Gearbox as being Randy Pitchford's company, that it is 100% believable. 2K in this case I do not believe is involved because Gearbox Publishing would have published it, not 2K. But this certainly is not something that you needed to have happen in the middle of Borderlands 3 still being in its launch window and this being a big deal. And I don't know if there was any kind of negotiation trying to go on here at all, or if the license on the music was even transferable in the sense that you could maintain that still same deal of $1 per unit of sales. Perhaps even at that's probably too expensive by modern standards. It probably is asking way too much to say give me $1 for every unit of a $20 game. But I don't feel like the composer was acting in bad faith and not trying to negotiate. I think at the very beginning, at least, he was trying to negotiate something, and Gearbox Publishing figured they could just do whatever they want. This is a problem, I guess, in general, of any video game company thinking they can just magically become a publishing company and not bothering to do even the basics legal work. Of course, also, you could question perhaps the fact that they're suing the former lawyer of Gearbox plays into the role of why they're not getting good legal advice. It could be that no lawyer team wants to work with Gearbox anymore because of the bad name that they've probably rightfully earned themselves. The bigger story here, though, is Valve being involved. Valve was sent a proper DMCA, alleges the composer, and refused to take it down. So you only have the fair safe haven protection if you immediately take it down. You don't have a choice. This is the one thing everybody hates as a YouTube content creator, is that any random Yahoo can put a DMCA takedown notice on your content, and it has to just be taken down. It sucks, but that's the way the law is written. The law is written terribly, obviously, but at the very least, it's a fair playing field, and it protects companies like Valve and companies like YouTube from being sued. It would be interesting, and we've seen in maybe 3 or 4 instances of YouTube saying that they were actually going to leave some videos up and see if the people actually sue them. But Valve has been a little bit more willing to ignore DMCA takedowns. We've seen this in some other instances. The whole Stardock fiasco in particular comes to mind, where there were games being DMCA'd and then they would come back up and then they'd be DMCA'd again, if I recall how that went. So I don't know what happened there, why specifically Valve thought they would side with Gearbox. The lawsuit is directly against Randy Pitchford, Gearbox Software, and Valve Software. There's a full filing of the lawsuit at Bloomberg Law if you're interested in reading the entire case. Yeah. Right now, Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary World Tour is on Steam for $19.99, still infringing, so every single unit sold at this point could be reasonable damages put upon that. So that might be more than $1 per every unit sold, frankly. In the case of copyright infringement, which was what this really boils down to, it would be all of the money. That's the way the law is written. So, as this is being sold, if this lawsuit wins, there is a very good chance that every single penny would be of every single Duke Nukem 20th Anniversary World Tour sale belongs to the composer. All the money. That's how bad of a legal position Randy Pitchford has allowed his company to be in. And sure, they can fight that in court, and they can fight it forever if they want to, but they're eventually going to run out of money. And this would be a weird ending to Gearbox, but I think most game developers would be perfectly happy to see Gearbox in particular. Most video game players, I mean, would be perfectly happy to see Gearbox just fall in pieces. Like, if the employees who are good from Gearbox left and started their own company, that would be great. If Randy Pitchford disappeared and never came back, that would be great. Just retired somewhere on his own private island. And yeah, I don't know what else to really say there. It's just bad. As far as the Borderlands series, if Gearbox went out of business, 2K owns that, so 2K could easily license that game to any other company. And I think, frankly, 2K would be in a good position to do that anyways. And I wouldn't be upset if all of the AAA game developers and publishers went out of business, but yeah, this would certainly be a weird thing. Meanwhile, as Duke Nukem threatens to potentially bankrupt, and I have no evidence it actually would bankrupt Gearbox, but I wouldn't be surprised if they declared bankruptcy if they lost the case and with prejudice and couldn't appeal it. There's really so little value in the Duke Nukem series anyways that it was kind of ridiculous in them buying it. There was absolutely nothing that could have been done with that license. Clearly, several companies had tried to finish Duke Nukem Forever and weren't able to finish it, and that basically leaves them with nothing else to do. Alright, next on Steam, I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these. This clearly is some kind of asset flip UI character generator that is being sold, and I'm not even going to go any further. Live desktop beauties. This is English, Chinese, and Russian, so you can see it's a low effort thing. It's $6.29 discounted. Like, they are like green screened 3D model girls. I wouldn't call them anime by any means, that just sit on your desktop. Like, honestly, if you're needing to see a 3D girl in her underwear 24/7 on your desktop, you've probably gotten to the point where you've hit an obsession. It is actively being detrimental to you living a normal life. Because if somebody can't even see your desktop without looking at you side-eyed, that's probably a bit of a problem. Honestly, like, even if you were working in the porn industry and your job was to edit porn video 24/7, if you're going out of your way to have even more lewd or pornographic material on your desktop than what is required of the job, you've gone too far. Like, have a little bit more of a well-rounded life, and like limit yourself to looking at nudity 4 or 5 times a day, not 24/7. It'll lose the mystique or the specialness of it. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called A Room, which looks like it is a car battle, kind of low effort game if I was watching it correctly. Yeah, looks like it's a player versus player car battle low effort game from the looks of it. Maybe it's not actually car battles. You're so zoomed out with the camera I can't even really see what you're doing. It seems like it's cats and dogs in cars for no reason. $4.99. It doesn't seem like it has any online multiplayer. It's English only. Yep, nothing appealing as far as that game. Let's do this. This should be the last game we have to play on this account. Apparently Popular Science has an article about, are you brushing your teeth properly? My electric toothbrush, I think, has a short in it, so it's time to replace it, I suppose. But in the meantime, I'll just brush the old-fashioned way without electronics. The King of Random had a video talking about what damages your teeth, like drinking soda and such, and Coca-Cola in particular damaged and stained the teeth terribly. Coffee did also. They were talking about how you should wait at least 30 minutes after eating to brush your teeth, otherwise you're going to potentially damage your teeth more. This will do 2 damage to the enemy hero, so we have to do this to see if we can draw another card. And we did draw another card, but it doesn't work. So that's like the maximum amount of damage I could have done. Next we have a game on Steam called Just Drift It, which looks like it's a drifting simulator game and nothing else. Some of this layout seems kind of familiar to what I've seen in one of the Dirt games. That being said, I guess they're probably all the drift mini games that are on TV are about the same. I really wouldn't want to play a game where it was all about drifting though. Even in the Dark games, which had pretty good control, the drifting was a nightmare. This is $2.99, so I imagine the controls are terrible, and it's English only with 26 achievements. So I have no interest in that. Alright. So we have a decent amount of news still left, and we have the Americas account and the Asian account and the European account to do. So this is a good point to end this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below in the description box. And if you want to support me even further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.